really do see it as our job to be the champions of people, and to be the ones that are pushing the envelope on how we should be training, when we should be training, and what we should be training.
George Donahue is the director of training at 60 Vines in Mexican Sugar. Jaime, if you go to a 60 Vines, they have 60 wines on tap.
I actually went to one in Orlando.
What'd you think?
I loved it.
You know, I would imagine that George is a pretty hard job when it comes to like training. It's probably not easy every day to know, to be up to speed with tasting notes across 60 different items. But hey, that's what we're going to talk to George a little bit about today. Prior to 60 Vines in Mexican Sugar, he was the Senior Director of Learning and Development at Fogo de Chao. Been there too, Jaime?
No.
No?
No.
Really?
That's on my list.
Okay. Roger loves Fogo de Chao. And Zoe's Kitchen, prior to that, he spent his whole career thinking about how you skill up, better up, develop teams within organizations in the hospitality space. I want to talk about a bunch of things with George. I want to talk about not just what's happening in the restaurant space, but I want to talk about culture. I want to talk about what makes a good training program different from all the other ones. I want to talk about how he thinks about people. Here's George Donahue.
So George, I guess to kick us off, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Not unlike most restaurant guys and gals, I started early in the industry. I was a dishwasher, 13 at a local catfish restaurant on the East Coast. Didn't realize it at the time, was completely falling in love with it. Didn't know that it was getting inside my veins, but it was. And, it's how I put myself through college. I was a server and a trainer for a concept that everyone knows and is no longer with us in the United States, but I've spent my entire life in restaurants and around restaurants, and hospitality in general, hotels as well through school. Culinary school grad, hospitality management grad, went to NC State for a few years as a business grad. Didn't make it because I realized I hated it, and that I needed to get back into the hospitality field, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've been a part of small mom and pop brands that have grown to public companies. And that's kind of my sweet spot, being part of organizations that are scaling. I love the craziness of it. Got two beautiful kids, a beautiful wife, and living in Dallas, Texas.
I find that directors of training, especially in hospitality and food, they're really tough to go to dinner with, because they're always watching everything. They're always on alert. Is that the same with you?
It's 100% true. I would say that about anybody in operations as well. Like my family always wants to go eat at the restaurants that I support, and it's very hard for me to do it because when I go, I'm working. I can't just enjoy the cocktail. I'm constantly looking. So yeah, that's probably pretty accurate across the board.
In your mind, how do you define a quality customer experience? What does that look like?
Well, I think the key word there is experience. We say a lot here, like we're, in our environment, we say chase experiences, not sales. And I think that's where a lot of, I would say that's probably true for retail as well. But when you're so focused on getting the sale and you forget about the experience, that's kind of the missing piece of the puzzle. So for us, and for me in general, like when I'm as a guest, when I'm out and about, that's what I'm looking for. I want to know that I'm experiencing something unique. I'm experiencing something authentic, that I'm not getting the same spiel from my server or my bartender that, they've given 40 times that night. And it's hard. That's hard to do, but that's what I'm looking for. And I think that's what most people are looking for is experience. And I think that's even going to be more important now as we come out of COVID. I don't think the run-of-the-mill restaurant hospitality experience is just going to cut it anymore. So,
yeah, that's interesting. What's changed about your role on the training side? And I ask that from the perspective of as the service experience has changed and the labor force. Maybe everybody complained about millennials. Now we're complaining about Gen Z. Like, what's changed about that training and development motion to get the most out of your people?
Yeah, it's funny. We'll find a reason to complain about any generation, won't we? It doesn't matter who it is. For me, I do think there's truth in that, certain generations require certain approaches. But I also think that it's true that every generation wants the same thing too. So we all want to feel valued. We all want to feel like we're well taken care of. We all want to feel security. We all want to feel pride in the job that we're doing and the opportunities that we have. So I think that the consistencies across the generations is more important than like what a specific generation needs. Now, when that comes to delivering whatever learning product you're trying to deliver, I do think that can be generational, specific, and we try to meet that. But the biggest changes I've seen is that the quality and the originality of the training content that we should be delivering now is a little bit different. The expectation, I think, is higher, and I think it's good because it's requiring all of us to kind of step up to the plate and do things that are unique and out of the box and that we've never done before, and maybe let go of some of those things that we know don't work, like really bad PowerPoints, and move on to things that are actually effective.
What is it like, because so many, consumers frequent, everybody eats, everybody goes to restaurants. I think from being in the trenches like you are, really seeing the front of house experience, the back of house, and the operation as a whole. What would surprise the average consumer about building a team or a culture inside of a restaurant brand like 60 Vines?
No, yeah, that's a great question. I think that, and I would say just any restaurant, right? What I think people sometimes miss is the level of soft skills it requires to be good at any position in a restaurant. There's this old saying, like, better be careful, you end up flipping burgers. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but it's like a threat parents make to the kids. I've always really been bothered by that statement because in my mind, you would be so lucky to end up flipping burgers. And there's a few reasons why. What you get from like a people standpoint and being able to learn how to be around people and interact with people and deal with stressful situations and conflict management and de-escalation and all of those things, it's like a crash course. And you just can't get that in that concentrated form, I believe, really anywhere else outside of the hospitality industry. So I think sometimes we forget that these are actual human beings in the restaurants, and they've had to adapt and change and learn and grow just to be able to function in that kind of stressful environment. And it is stressful. I mean, it's an intense work environment, and a lot of things come from that. And so one of the things you talk about what's changed in training, the last few years, the focus on wellness and helping people be full, that their cups are full. So it's like, if I expect you to provide an incredible experience to a guest, but you're just not mentally there, you're not mentally in it, you've got stress, from outside of work that you're bringing with you, we got to help that. And so we've just been focused on that. And also, we talk to people a lot about that so that they can have awareness of what it's like to be right now in the hospitality industry, dealing with COVID and all that. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. I look at, as a sports guy, I always kind of look at the training director as kind of like the strength and conditioning coach. I mean, they didn't necessarily get to recruit the players that show up in their weight room, but their responsibility to develop them. But from your vantage point, what type of recommendations do you have to folks out there who are hiring right now? What does it look like from your view on the type of worker that stands out to be successful in a job in a hospitality environment?
Sure. So there's options right now. I mean, everybody is hiring. Everybody is looking for the best of the best. If I were to give advice to other employers who are struggling, finding that talent and bringing that talent in, I go back to that word authentic. And I just see a lot of really subpar kind of talent recruiting strategies that, where I get filtered out by an ATS system that doesn't care about me or what I've got. Maybe I submitted the wrong type of document to the computer and it just kicked it out. Maybe there's nobody actually filtering through. So I personally believe the talent's out there. We're seeing it where I am. And it's not easy, and I don't want to paint too broad of a stroke on it, but I think that personal touch is what is missing. And anyone who's tried to look for a job in the last few years has seen that the rise of technology in that space has been great because it can help, but it can also really hinder. And a lot of, I can speak specifically in my industry because I know it the best, a lot of restaurants are kind of being handcuffed by the technology they choose. So being really smart about how you go to market with your job propositions and what you bring to the table as an employer, but then not letting a piece of technology get in the way of that. It should be amplifying, not like, handcuffing you.
Totally. In your current role, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have in our building a training team that supports your strategy, correct?
Yeah, so like a lot of training directors, I wear a few hats: a little bit of HR, a little bit of operations, a little bit of ops services, and then in restaurant we have certified trainers that facilitate the training for new hires in our restaurants. So, and we have training restaurants that are specifically for salary training. So when we hire new managers, but yeah, there's a whole team of us making it happen.
What again, just to kind of pull some advice from you with. I think there's been a big surge recently. There's going to be, I think, a really big surge next year as HR budgets really start to come, maybe normalize, of organizations either rethinking or investing better in whether it's software or it's people around development and training as a category. What advice do you have to someone who is standing up that department from scratch? You've done a lot scaling up in environments where brands are moving really quickly. What would you tell me if I got hired tomorrow, first time head of training, really excited about the opportunity, but I'm green? What are the things I should focus on?
I think where I've found success in the past is being really connected to the business. So understanding the financials of not only the unit level financials, but the G&A at the corporate level, understanding what the strategic goals are for the company. So being lockstep with whatever the CEO is trying to accomplish. That to me is really important if you want a seat at the table. Training directors that are disconnected from the financials of the business often are not included in decisions that they could and should be included in. So that's always what I tell any new time training person, is to get involved and really intimately familiar with the financials. Once you have that, I think that it is a job of, and it's never really written anywhere, but I really do see it as our job to be the champions of people, and to be the ones that are pushing the envelope on how we should be training, when we should be training, and what we should be training. It also is a very common challenge for us that we often are given things and saying, hey, I need a training program for this. But it's not actually a training problem. It's a leadership problem, or it's a communication problem, or it's simply a coaching issue, right? We can coach better. And so training directors, if you really want to be good at it, you got to be able to kind of identify like what problem we're actually solving for. And then, yes, providing a solution for it. It's not like saying like, oh, that's not my job. It's an operations issue. But it's saying it's not actually that you need a training guide, video, game, whatever it may be. It's that you need help with your leaders being able to be better coaches. So let's focus on that. And so problem identification and then having really creative solutions is, to me, the hallmark of a great training director, or anybody in training that can do that. If you can master that, the sky's the limit.
Sure. I wanted to ask you this question, just given the amount that is kind of coming up in the news cycle around the great resignation, and folks that are considering. You said earlier, people have options. People are starting to look for other paths. What from your seat, how are you getting ahead of that for maybe folks who may be considering options?
Yeah, absolutely. And we felt that early on. I mean, I think a lot of the reports that I was seeing was that 40% of the hospitality workforce, or somewhere around that, has opted out of that. And I think there's we could probably talk for 4 hours on why that is. And but I think that's a pretty close number based on what we've experienced and what we're seeing. The good news is, and I can only speak from my small corner of the world, we feel it coming back. We're getting a lot of people that are opting back in. And I think maybe that's because they feel safer. But we still talk daily about that future state, which, because I do believe it's coming, where you've got, people who have opportunity to jump out of the restaurant space, or the hospitality space in general, and move to another industry. Maybe they're taking some at-home work. Maybe they're doing some side gigs, like whatever it is. People are looking for other opportunities. So what we're doing, and what I would advise anyone and encourage anyone in the restaurant space to do, is think about restaurant culture. If we continue the way that we are kind of notorious for continuing in the restaurant space, we have a reputation. I don't think it's a secret to anyone. I mean, you can go back to like Bourdain's, early book. He was calling it out back then, but we have a lot of toxic culture that happens in the restaurant space. We have a lot of that's born from the stress that we're going through as we're trying to pull this off every day. So there's, not making excuses for it, but we have real opportunities in redefining like what it means to be a restaurateur, or working in a restaurant, or building a career in restaurants. We have a real opportunity, and like helping people see that, like, yeah, you can make a very successful career working in a restaurant. And it's hard for people to see that, because when they look at the leaders that are leading them, they're like, I don't know, do I really want to work, 70 hours a week and miss all my family events and not be a part of the things that really matter in life? And because that's the picture, what they've seen this whole time, they don't know. So what we're doing is we're trying to redefine all of that. We're trying to reimagine all of that. We're trying to look at, wellness is kind of being our total approach to, hey, you want to work for 60? This is going to be all about wellness. And what does that look like? We're still figuring it out. We're making some pretty cool moves. We got some big plans, but I think any restaurateur out there that's not thinking about the work environment and the culture, you're going to be so far behind, because people are over it. They want something better. And we are we can provide something really cool and special, but we have to stop with the 80s and 90s and early 2000s kind of mentality of running restaurants and move into the future.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's almost like, so many folks that maybe get so tunnel visioned on training, the technical part of the job. And, it's almost striking a balance across everything that you're coaching and focusing on.
Yeah, everything has to have a balance. And of course, we got to get people functionally competent in their role, but I also want them to be better human beings. And we need to be better human beings first as their leaders. So that's kind of the approach we're taking.
That's cool. Yeah, better humans are better workers, right? Like that's kind of goes together.
It's a funny thought.
Well, that leads us to a last question, George. Future of work is a topic which is often, about robots coming, and there's definitely your fair share in your industry and restaurants with robots popping up. The flipping the burger thing, you might not even be able to do if certain brands had, full reign. When you hear future of work, what's your hope for the future of work?
My hope for the future of work is that people aren't discouraged by technology advancing. I see that as opportunity. I see that as like ways, how can technology make certain parts of the job easier? Let's just take something mundane like rolling silverware, which is like a huge dissatisfier in the rough. Nobody likes to do it. Everybody hates it. Everyone complains about it. I don't know. If I had a robot that could do it for me, and then I could focus solely on the guest experience, like I think I'd be down with that. And so I don't get so freaked out about like job replacement when it comes to stuff like that. I think that we will find a way, and I go back to that word experience. Like I just think that people are always going to value that, and they're always going to look for that, and those that can provide it are going to be okay. And if part of that experience is having a robot flip a burger for you, that might be for a while, but ultimately we're about human connection as humans. And I don't think that that's going to go away, and I'm not worried about it.
George, thanks for taking time.
You bet. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
You had a lot of really big takeaways from George. A few of them, he said any restaurant out there not thinking about the work environment and the culture is going to be so behind because people are over it. I don't know if there's ever been a more true statement made today. But one up from that, he talked about wanting people to be functional in their role, but he said that he also wants them to be good people, and to start with that. As we think about the future of work, today it's true in America, 1 in 2 workers are low wage, 80% service sector. These are people who deliver an experience in an environment which is very challenging and at times requires you to be agile, requires you to move quickly. And it was really cool to be able to talk to George, who, in my opinion, is doing some tremendous work at 60 Vines as part of the Front Burner network of brands that is working every day to try to create an environment where all of their people can be successful. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to look up 60 Vines in Mexican Sugar, see if there's one in your neighborhood. If not, they're probably coming there soon. Now don't forget to subscribe to Bring It In so you never miss an episode. We've got some awesome guests lined up that you're not going to want to miss. Now, back to work.